Welcome to Across the Pond Women's College Basketball. I'm Stacia Whitaker.
And I'm Aubrey Knight.
Hello, everybody. Before we get into the fun, which is basketball, we're going to get into the bad side of what has happened so far and a little bit of news going on with basketball. Starting with news, we'll start with a coach that I adore leaving Virginia Tech to go to Kentucky. Kenny Brooks has accepted the job at Kentucky, and he is going there, which is a little disappointing because we don't know what Amore's doing yet for the W. And he's got a lot of young talent that fought pretty hard and did better than Amore in their game. And so he's leaving a lot of talent to go to Kentucky. What do you think about that? Would you want to live in Kentucky?
No, honestly, I don't think I would want to live in Kentucky. But
Me neither.
my guess is it's probably about a bigger stage, more opportunity. Not that, there isn't where he was at, but also probably more money. Money always plays into it.
Money
So,
does. Yep.
and maybe he knows something about Amore that we don't
That's true. Will Georgia go with him? Will he take that talent from Virginia Tech to Kentucky to the
know.
SEC? Even though I believe that the ACC has been more successful than the SEC of late, we'll see. But I mean, the past two national champions are in the SEC. As much as
Yeah.
I think they're collectively not as good, they do have the past two national champions, which are still in the tournament. And
Yes.
speaking of one of them, if you don't live under a rock, you have heard that Kim Mulkey has hired the best defamation law firm in the country, and will sue the Washington Post if they print a false word about her. And so apparently, I believe it's a profile and not according. I don't think it's a takedown piece, but it who knows what it will say on Kim Mulkey that I believe is I've read has been researched for 2 years, which would have been the start of when Brittany Griner went to jail in Russia.
Mhm.
So that is what's happening in the land of LSU right now, other than basketball, because there's always something other than basketball at LSU happening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been like that for the last 2 years. So, I mean, we can see that. I think like no one really knows what this piece is going to be about, but I'm excited to read it, and then we can discuss once it comes out when we actually have the facts.
I am very excited to see what the former associates, players, assistant coaches, administrators, any journalists that have been in contact with Kim in the past that may have not gone so well. I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to all the names that we get to see and all of the things that are happening. So thank you for letting the world know, Kim, that this Washington Post article is happening. Looking forward to it. Right.
Yes, me too.
So there are two coaches news for the NCAA. Now, I'm going to go with the harshest one. Utah played Gonzaga. They were not able to stay in Spokane because Spokane hotels, this has been an issue. This is the second time I've heard of hotels being an issue in Spokane. So Utah was staying in Idaho, and the worst thing that could happen is people. It's been reported that people yelled the N word at players from Utah, and I don't know if it was the band, but I believe it said the cheerleaders as well on staff, and that is just a horrible thing for anyone to go through. And I believe an ESPN analyst said, "How are we expecting these women to play? Possibly the last game, and it was the last game of some of their careers,
Yeah.
while they're worried about their physical safety and dealing with racism uh, again and again." And I mean, part of that is we don't know if it would have happened if they were in Spokane, but they were staying a half an hour away in Idaho. And I feel for all the Utah players, and I said how I picked them to win, and I really like Utah this year, and it's just horrible.
Yeah, it is terrible. I don't think that represents, the university, either of the universities. It's terrible that this has happened. Obviously, the safety of the players is the most important thing, and you should never have to worry, like you said, about your safety when you're just trying to play a basketball game. I know when I was playing in college, there was a few situations that happened with us too, and it really gets your head out of the game. As much as you try not to, it's really hard to forget those things and not have them affect how you play. I know Gonzaga put out a statement. I know it's not how they want their university to be represented, and I just hope that we can learn from this and that this won't keep being something that has to be talked about.
Well, and it wasn't anything from Gonzaga, it was
Yeah,
the NCAA and the city
other
of
people, yeah.
Spokane, like, I mean, not being able to have them there, and then some ignorant, horrible people in Idaho, and so that I'm not trying to pick on the state of Idaho, um, but people in Idaho that did this, and so so sorry, Utes. You had a great season. You had a great season last year.
Mhm.
I hope that this doesn't happen again, but I'm realistic, or some things are going to happen again, and I just hope that we can just get better as a world to
Yeah,
moving past the stupidity.
100%.
Um, Yep. Another thing, a little lighter, but still not good on the NCAA's part, is after Michigan lost to Kansas. Just gonna throw up my Kansas shirt there. They were gonna go board an airplane, and then had to. I think they were in their airplane for an hour and a half, and were at the airport for over 5 hours, and didn't get the flight out. And they could have been hanging out with their families at the hotel. And Layla Filia documented on her TikTok about how they were just kind of stuck at the airport when they were told they were going to get a flight out, and then didn't. And again, another failure on the NCAA's part with a couple things on that. I believe I read that they got a pilot, and then the pilot kind of was like, I cannot do this, citing fatigue. So at least there was some safety in there,
Yeah,
but just a waste of time, just wasting time, especially after a loss and being frustrated when you could have hung out with your families.
yeah. I think that, logistically things need to get better, and obviously they have gotten better over the last few years, but this just shows that, you know, the safety, and after you lose a game, you just want to go home, or you want to be hanging out with your family like you said. So, being stuck at an airport for 5 hours after you just lost a game is not ideal by any means. So,
Uh,
hopefully you can just get better and learn from this, and, you know, hopefully get teams out when they're supposed to get out. Barring
yes,
any, weather issues that you can't really
yes,
control.
yeah. Besides the safety, but at least being more transparent with your communication about what is happening, and
Mhm.
so they can at least enjoy some part of their time after this happens. Yeah, after a loss. But there's that. Those are the news that are beyond just the basketball games for the NCAA tournament. And now we're going to go to the tournament. So, bracket, starting in South Carolina's bracket. I think we had a very good bracket there when it came to our choices.
Yeah.
South Carolina, second round, we each picked North Carolina. That was an 8-9 that went our way. And
Mhm.
then South Carolina played North Carolina, and Sabria Whitaker, who I follow her. I really like Sabria Whitaker. She had, I believe, a tweet, and it said, "SC, please." So South Carolina, please, and then had a crying emoji. These young women have families, and they're in attendance. And that may be one of the greatest things I think I've heard about how South Carolina just treated North Carolina like they were an elementary school team by how much they dominated them.
I know. Yeah, that was a tough game to watch as far as North Carolina came. I mean, North Carolina put up a good fight, but South Carolina was just dominating that entire game.
It there if you want to see something that describes it, Andrea Carter had on her Instagram just her complete she was just flabbergasted by how well they were playing, in studio at halftime, and it was absolutely hysterical how she was just like, they just it's so beautiful." It's like just throwing out like, "I don't even know what to say. This is so good." And
Yeah,
North Carolina, I think, lost by 8 to South Carolina earlier in the season. And I was like, maybe North Carolina could do something to make
yeah,
it. I was like, I didn't think they were going to win, but I didn't think they were going to get like murdered like 57,000 times, is what it felt like that whole game.
yeah,
Whew.
yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, it just shows South Carolina when it comes to tournament time is not messing around.
They are not. All right. More of competitive games. Have Indiana versus Fairfield. Fairfield's second quarter, everything gets turned around. Indiana just rolls. Oklahoma, Florida Gulf Coast. I said this could be an interesting one. End up being
Yeah,
a 3-point game that OU pulled out. And Sue Bird tweeted about at the end of the game to get a shot off to tie it. Florida Gulf Coast, I believe Sue Bird said everyone should put this play in their repertoire. It was just doing the merry-go-round and then got open for a shot, and it was a very cool play. You should look it up at the end of the game. I mean, they didn't make it, but Oklahoma hung on, and then Oklahoma and Indiana had one of the better games of the tournament so far, with
Yeah,
Indiana just kind of pulling it out at the end, 75-68. That was a good game.
yeah. I think again this bracket we talked about kind of like things, some of these games could be really good games and some of these teams could surprise us. I think we knew Oklahoma Indiana was going to be a good game. It just came down, to the last few minutes and Indiana was just able to pull that one out. And
And
we both
it's a
picked Indiana to win, so.
we did not. You picked
Oh,
Oklahoma. I re-listened to it. No,
oh, you're
no.
right. I did pick Oklahoma.
It's like, you did. It's like,
I
nope, and I have I keep saying I had a thing for Indiana. It is pretty much because they were
did.
undefeated at home this year. Because I don't I say I don't wanna go against my conference, but I definitely do sometimes because I'm a person, and I like Indiana. But, yeah, undefeated at home, celebrated with their fans, good on them. Now, South Carolina versus Indiana. Who's gonna win that game?
South Carolina. I think it
South
could be a good game. I think Indiana, if they come, I mean, they're going to have to come with their A game, the best game they've ever played. Because
Yeah.
as we could see when South Carolina was playing North Carolina, that they're ready to play. So Indiana has to come out firing, but I still think South Carolina is going to win this one.
Yeah, I think so too. If Indiana shoots, if they can make if they can make 12 3-pointers in the game, they would have a shot. But they need
Yeah,
to make, I would say, 12 3-pointers, and then they got to get Cardoso into foul trouble.
yeah,
So then that could open it up a little bit more for Holmes. Don't think it's going to happen. Choosing South Carolina for sure, to be in that Elite Eight. Then we had Nebraska versus A&M. This is one of the. There's been a lot of games where there's been huge comebacks. A&M had the lead under a minute to go, I believe, after being down 17. I wanna say in the end of the 3rd quarter. Yes, at the end of the 3rd quarter, and then they had an 8-0 run to get down 9, and they got the lead in, like, the last minute. Nebraska somehow pulls it off, but it was one of those after, and this was, like, a later game because it was, out west in Corvallis.
uh-huh.
After the comebacks that happened, which you're gonna talk about, I was just like, "Is someone else gonna come back and have, like, a high teen lead that they just blow and turn around?" And Nebraska was like, "Maybe," but then they pulled it out and won. But, oh my gosh, come on, girls.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's. I'm glad for Nebraska's sake that they won that because that's the worst feeling is to have a huge lead on someone and then lose it, especially in a game that can end your season. So it would have been cool to see Texas A&M come out and pull the upset, but I'm glad for Nebraska's sake that they were able to finish this out
Yeah,
and not
and
blow a lead.
well, and then Oregon State just takes care of, Eastern Washington, and
Yep.
Beers plays in Nebraska Oregon State game. Oregon State, you know, handles it and makes it into the Sweet 16. I mean, I it only ended up being a 10-point game at the end, but Oregon State had control the whole time. So good job, Beavers. They only have one loss at home this whole year, so this is kind of one of those aspects where home court advantage is still very important, even though we saw upsets last year.
Yes, and like I said, that gym is so hard to play in. It's like
Big
a
barn,
barn. It's one of the hardest gyms that I ever played in.
big barn. I,
Yeah.
so we got first round. We both had Old Miss um, beating Marquette. They did, and we each had Notre Dame. So we had the Ole Miss Notre Dame game. Now this is the 7. When we knew that there were some 7s that could do some damage to the 2 seeds. This is the 7 that you picked, and I was weary of Old Miss. But when Ole Miss and Notre Dame played, again, Notre Dame handled them, and Hidalgo and Citron and Westbeld are very, like, they're looking very good right now.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I am, and it's not just that they're looking good. There is such a cohesiveness with this team. They won the ACC tournament. They're playing it's just, it's a very smooth offense and connection that they have currently.
Yeah. I mean, like we had said, Notre Dame is dangerous. They're playing really well. They're playing the best game that they've played towards the end of the season, but they're going against Oregon State, which has also stepped up at the last part of the season. Both of these teams have, got their best abilities and proved how they could play the game at the end of the season when it counts. So, I mean, I think this is going to be a really good game. Oregon State, Notre Dame. Who are you picking?
I'm switching this.
Okay.
We each picked Oregon State because you had Ole Miss versus Oregon State, and I had Oregon
Yeah.
State versus Notre Dame, and so I just feel that the chemistry of Notre Dame is going to be too much for Oregon State. Now, I
Okay.
also would like to know how healthy Beers is, but she gets some time to
Yeah.
because that could, and then Talia of all on Van Alhoffen is just a fiery player that can get hot, and of course made the winning three in my favorite game of the year.
Mhm.
Um, but I think Notre Dame's going to do it because I feel like Hidalgo is primed and ready to just carry this stardom that she's had
Okay.
into the Elite Eight. So I have Notre Dame, South Carolina in the Elite Eight. You still
Okay.
sticking with Oregon State?
Yeah, I got it back to pack. I'm still going Oregon State. I think Oregon State is dangerous, and I think that their coaching staff is some of the best in the country, and they know how to make plays. They know how to write up plays, and the team is just really good at effectively doing what the coaches ask them to. And like I said, they're firing on all cylinders towards the end of the season, which is exactly what they need to do. I don't think this is going to be a blow up by any means. I think this is a game that's going to come down to the last minute of the game
That's nice.
or overtime if that happens.
I believe it's an afternoon game on Friday, and so I'm sitting there. Yes, it is. It's the 1:30 game on Friday. So if this is one of those where you need to have it on, America, who cares about work? Watch this game.
Yes.
We are putting we're letting you know that this is gonna be a good one, and
Yep.
if it's not a good one, we've been wrong before, so sorry, but I still think it's gonna be a good one, but
I think it's going to be a good
I'm switching to Notre Dame on this.
one.
Alright,
Okay.
it's if Oregon State can handle Hidalgo's pressure and has low turnovers, because you said about how deliberate they are, that's is gonna be huge. Because then I don't know on how Notre Dame fast break points and turnovers, that's gonna be the biggest issue in this. Everything else pretty even.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Alright. Alright, so Region 4 in Portland. Alright, moving to Portland, we got the Texas and wins easily against Drexel, and then has not like a tight game against Alabama, but Alabama just didn't go away, and
Yeah.
neither of us picked Alabama
No.
to make it through against Florida State, and they looked good. Um, and their coach has coached in a national championship game like 23 years ago, Christy Curry, but Texas was like barely hung on to control at the end of the game, which makes me kind of like not weary for them, but it's like, yeah, they had like dips, but they never let their dips get less than two possession or less than three possessions. They always had like a three possession lead at the end of the game. So
Yeah.
I really liked that with Texas because they have so many weapons, and I never know who's gonna do well for them in a game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if I had, I picked Texas winning the second round. I mean, obviously they handled Drexel, Alabama, Florida State, then Alabama beats Florida State. Texas, Alabama was a good game. But like you said, Texas kind of handled business. And I mean, basketball's a game of runs. It's about how you can get out of those ruts. And Texas showed that it's not possession, possession, possession. They have a few possessions where, they might not be playing well, but then they snap back into it. And that's important, right? Especially in tournament play.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think this Texas, well, I guess we could go into the other part of it, but this
Yeah.
16 game is it's gonna be a good game too. I don't think any of these Sweet 16 games are gonna be blowouts. I think they're all gonna be close games. I think
I,
South Carolina
Indiana
that
could be the blowout.
that
Yeah.
could be a blowout, but that's the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about the only one. And then also Texas won, and Kevin Durant, someone who goes and supports his former school, because we talked before we recorded that there are certain people that go and support like their former players and watch them
Yep.
play in the pros, or go back and watch this. And same thing with players go and watch other players to show support. And so it was nice to see
Yep.
Kevin Durant do that. And this is not the first time he's gone to watch women's college basketball.
Mhm.
He's when he was playing in Oklahoma City for the Thunder, he came and watched NCAA tournament games too. So happy that he's there, because Madison Becker wears 35 because she loves Kevin Durant. So you see an All American freshman like you were, just killing it and wearing your number because of you. It's pretty
Yeah.
nice. So I'm happy that she got to meet him and see him. That's
Yeah.
always good whenever that
Awesome.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving into Utah and Gonzaga, they meet in the second round. I am hoping that Utah wins, and you were right. And it just Gonzaga just controlled that game so much and looked really good. Um, they they impressed me because you don't get to see them play that often. So I'm just gonna give you all the compliments in the world and how right you were on that. And good job, Zags. Good job, Zags. It was a good game.
Yeah, it's the only Pac-12 team I had losing in the second round. And obviously, it would have been great to see Utah win, but I just had a feeling at home, Gonzaga, they're dangerous,
Dangerous.
and they proved me right.
I mean, they've made it to the Elite Eight before Gonzaga has. And so, are you still taking Gonzaga over Texas in that Sweet 16 game?
Yeah, I'm taking Gonzaga over Texas
I am sticking with
because that's
Texas.
different for you, right?
That's what
Because you had Texas, Utah in that.
I did, and I'm sticking with Texas making it through to the Elite Eight because I definitely didn't have Utah beating Texas.
Okay.
All right, bottom side of the bracket. Uh, I'm gonna Tennessee, NC State played, and we each chose Tennessee to make it through to the Sweet 16, and they get down by 20, and then get within a bucket in like the last 5 minutes of the game. But you get down by 20 on someone's home floor, and even though NC State let them back in, that's a lot. That's a lot of a mountain that you have to climb and get past to come
Yeah,
back, especially on someone's home floor. And NC State's had good crowds in these tournaments, so they hold on and win 79-72. So does NC State letting Tennessee come back after being up by 20 points, does that show that they have grit that they hung on, or does that show a weakness that they let Tennessee back in?
it shows a weakness 100%. I mean, that shows that you kind of started to let up, and Tennessee just kept punching back. And if you do that against Stanford, Stanford is not going to let that happen.
I don't think so either, especially because of what recently happened with one of their players. Um, yeah. Uh,
Yes.
so so we each had Maryland beating Iowa State, and I listened to our last episode, and I said I'm really looking forward to see what Audie Crooks does in that Maryland game because I feel like she could do some damage in the paint because Maryland didn't have that many um, like post players, and I didn't even remember saying that, but I went back and listened to it. I mean, girl makes 18 of 20 shots and scores 40 points and is the first freshman to do that since Bill Walton in 1973. And on that day, I think the funny quote was the best player from Iowa is not Caitlin Clark today. It was Audi Crooks.
Yep.
40 points. She was
Crazy.
better from the field than the free throw line because she was 4 of 8 from the free throw line. But girl, and also they came back from 20 points down. I kept
I know.
tracking it and I was like, Maryland, oh, Maryland's got this. And then I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, and they put up a fight against Stanford too. I was
That's the
amazed.
understatement. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that I was amazed, and she put on her best game on the biggest stage of the year. So all good
Yeah.
for her.
Good for her. Now, that Stanford game against Iowa State, it was late. And so I'm getting older. I like to sleep a little bit earlier. It was out West Coast time and I just kept watching it and dozing off. And my friend from Oklahoma sent me a text because she knew I was awake afterwards. No one knew who was going to win that game until like the last 10 seconds of overtime. It
Yep.
was 66-66 at the end of regulation. Cameron Brink fouled out with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and I kind of thought the same thing that my friend said. Not a high scoring game, 66-66. In overtime, Stanford puts up 21, Iowa State puts up 15. 36 points in 5 minutes as opposed to 66 each in 40 minutes.
Crazy.
It was the highest scoring single overtime game combined, like with the two teams,
Yeah.
in NCAA history.
Wow.
And I can tell you, I was just like, I don't even know who I want to win this game. Emily
Yeah.
Ryan, I think, had 36 points. 6 of 6 from the free throw line, had 6 threes, 6 of 9 from three. Iowa State was 12 of 19 from three. But the biggest thing, and this is where this is going to be huge against NC State because they have a couple post players, but we talked about how if Stanford plays South Carolina last episode in the Final Four, we think that they could beat them because of the post players, and it's Cameron and Kiki. Kiki
Yep.
very often, 41 points. And most impressive thing for me, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. Girl, it now I don't think it's Cameron Brink's team anymore. It has become Kiki's team. Like Cameron, I hope Cameron like claims it back as her team, but she has to play more.
Yeah.
Kiki, 41 points to carry your team to win. Woohoo!
Yeah, it's stepping up when your team needs you, right? Like that's what good teams do. Even when like your best player on the team or your star of the team might not be playing well, or like Cameron fouled out, you have other players that are able to step up and win the game for you. And that's exactly what she did. And that's what they'll need to do, right? Ideally, Cameron and Kiki are both firing on all cylinders, both go for 20 pieces, 10 rebounds each. Like that would be ideal, right?
Yep.
But you can't expect to play fantastic every single game. And Kiki stepped up, and that's what makes Stanford and some of these teams that are, lasting in this tournament. That's what makes them good. Is when some players aren't doing well, other players aren't afraid to step up and do what they have to do.
I can tell you, get on your ESPN Plus and just watch that game, or just watch overtime. Just
Yeah,
go there, fast forward, and just watch overtime and just enjoy it. Like the last 30 seconds, I felt bad for Iowa State because there was a turnover that kind of like cost, but Demeter hit two threes and hit two free throws, and I was just like, yep. Like when they're down, yeah, even if you know who's going to win, you're just not ready for it. You're just
yep,
not ready for anything. And one thing that I will say about this game is there was one time when Kiki and Audie Crooks kind of like ran into each other and like had a collision, and I think Kiki was on the floor, and refs jumped in very quickly. So I want to know if that's like in our nice little ref meetings, like anytime there's any big collision, get in there. We're not having any fights, especially what happened at the end of the
probably.
SEC tournament. And immediately the refs were in there, and Audie and Kiki were each like tapping each other on the butt or the back, being like, "You good? You good? Okay, cool." There was such a level of, I don't know, just like, I don't even say it's like
Okay.
sportsmanship, but just if this wasn't a game to end your season and your career, this would have been a game like in the regular season would have been like, that was fun. We should do this again. Like
Yeah,
that's kind of the vibe, except for the fact that it could end your season. So such a fan of that game. All right. So now you still have Gonzaga beating Texas. I have Texas in the Elite Eight. NC State and Stanford. Where are we going with this?
Stanford.
Me too.
I
And
just think Stanford's not that NC State isn't a good team. I just think Stanford's a better team all around.
yep. So here's the other one. Uh, does Stanford beat Gonzaga or Texas? Are we
Yeah,
sticking with them? Yeah.
I'm
So
going with
we
Stanford all the way.
I'm still saying the same on that side of the bracket. I'm sticking with South Carolina, Stanford in that Final Four.
Okay,
So,
same.
yep. And then
That's what
on,
I'm
yeah. So sticking with that. All right. Now we're going to the other regional in Portland, where we have USC is in the Sweet 16. They beat my team, Kansas, after Kansas had a great comeback to force overtime and then won overtime. I'm just going to throw out, like, super proud of Zakiya Franklin, who used to be an abysmal 3-point shooter. Hit a three to send it to overtime against Michigan. And this shirt that I'm wearing, I wasn't wearing it, and then I realized I wasn't wearing it. And when the fourth quarter happened, I went and put it on, and then they made a run. So you're
doing.
welcome.
That was all you.
It was. My friend said the same thing. I know it was all me. They didn't play well until I put the shirt on. So,
Yeah. Well, it's your fault they
there you
weren't
go.
playing well.
Exactly, same thing. Yeah, I agree on that. And good job to KU. I believe they went 10-3 their last, yeah, 10-3. They started off 10-10, went 10-3 their last 13 games of the year to make it to the second round. And I'm going to say this because they pulled off that victory. The Big 12 was the only Power 5 school that was undefeated in the first round. I'm not including the first four, first round. So even though we only had two make it to the Sweet 16, being 7-0 in the first round makes me very proud of my conference.
Yeah, it's awesome.
This is where you say that the Pac has 5 in the Sweet 16.
Well, I wasn't gonna rub it in then. I was gonna do that later. But yeah, the
Okay.
Pac-12 has 5 teams in the Sweet 16. So
I mean, we knew that this was going to happen. Yeah. All right, so USC beats Kansas. They got within one, like with about a minute left in the fourth quarter. And then USC just was like, nah, that was about it. And just powered through. Yeah. Now, the other Big 12 team that USC will be playing is Baylor because they beat Virginia Tech. Close game. Georgia Amore, my muscle nugget, did not hit like any shots until like the last 2 minutes. Disappointing. And Jada Walker for Baylor. Whew. She had a great game to pretty much, I feel like Jada Walker willed Baylor into the Sweet 16. And you picked Baylor, and I picked Virginia Tech because they were at home, and God, they looked good against Marshall in that first round. Just killing it. And then they just weren't as good in this one, and it was very sad to see Liz Kitley on the sideline crying. But
I know.
that's how it happens.
Yeah. That was a good game to watch, though. I mean, they were battling back and forth. Baylor just kind of handled business towards the end, and I mean, it's tough to beat a team on their home court, and Baylor did it. So I think
Well,
that it's going to be a good game again against USC and Baylor.
I mean, I still think I think USC is gonna hand the
Mhm.
limb and win by, I would say, like 3 possessions. I'll say they'll win by 3 possessions.
Okay,
I'm gonna go with 8, not even 7. I'll say they'll win by 8. But
I'll give it
congrats to Baylor. Yeah, you say 5?
5 points. Yeah.
Okay. Congrats to Nikki Collin. This is her first time making it to Sweet 16 with Baylor. They were a 2 seed and got upset by South Dakota State a couple of years ago. Didn't make it out. So good for her. Like good for her and this team. Um, I do like some of the Baylor players. They're a little undersized and
Mhm.
they figure out a way to win. So and you called that one. So there you go. But we each have USC coming out of that,
Yep.
and then Syracuse, we didn't even know who they were going to play in the first round. It was either going to be Arizona or Auburn.
Yep.
And I said, whoever comes out of the Arizona Auburn game could give Syracuse fits. And they did.
Yep.
Arizona did. And at one point it was 61-66. And then Deasia Fair was like, I am one of the greatest scorers in the history of women's college basketball. And outscored Arizona in the last few minutes 13-3 for Syracuse to win 74-69. So that's another thing where Arizona had all of the potential this year and it just never came to full fruition to put
Yeah.
together a complete season. But I mean, they still made it to the tournament. But oh, Syracuse and Deasia Fair, there you go.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Arizona has been a tough team, right? Like we saw them in the Pac-12 being able to, stay in there some games and beat some big teams, and Arizona was going to be a tough game against Syracuse, but Syracuse just proved that they were the better team. And then,
Yeah.
then they had to face UConn in the second round.
Oh gosh. And then they got within, it was
So,
under a minute, down 3, and then UConn hits a 3 to put them up 6 to end up, winning the game. And Deasia Fair had 20 points, which put her like one above Kelsey Mitchell. And if you include Lynette Woodard, she's behind Caitlin, Lynette Woodard, and Kelsey Plum. So 4th all time in like major college
yeah.
Division One, NCAA 3rd all time now, because Lynette was in AIAW. But yeah, got 20 points and jumped 2 players to move up on that list in her 5th year. So giving herself more stock for the W. I'm interested to see. I know she's a little undersized. If where she's going to get drafted, because I think she'll get drafted in like the 2nd round.
Yeah.
And
I
it'd
think
be
she
cool if she made the team. It'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the real story of that UConn game is Paige buckets. I said before the tournament started, Paige buckets. Oh, Beckers,
Yeah.
girl playing good. She is balling out, and Dawn Staley is just taking notice of this.
Yep.
I saw her have a quote about it. Ooh, Paige.
And then Gino's, hyping her up, saying, "I got the best player in women's basketball right now."
Mm,
I don't know if you said it right now or in general, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Paige is showing that the spotlight should be more on her. And again, she's playing when she should be playing her best in this tournament. It's
yeah,
not going to be an easy ride for anyone going forward. So, UConn, UConn's showing it, and Paige got to say her name more.
yeah. And
She's a
then
bucket.
Ashlyn. Oh yeah, Ashlyn Shade, who I barely even knew middle of the season, had a career high in like their first game, and then Nikki Mule is always dangerous. Aaliyah Edwards, we know she's going to the W now,
Yep.
playing well. But I mean, the greatest thing about UConn, besides the wins, is the fact that on Gino's 70th birthday, they all had their own custom T-shirts of what Gino represented to them. Nikki Mule had the main character from Up. That's
So
supposed to be Gino. I Ashlyn Shade in a press conference had a picture of him when he was younger, just yelling. She goes, he does this to me a lot, but I've translated it to when he does this, it means I love you. So when I see this look, I kind of look back and in my head, I'm like, I love you too. Um, and also Paige had one where he needed a nap at like some press they did, I think, for beginning of the season. And she's like, yeah, so I took a flick when he just needed a nap, and it's her smiling and him just napping over there. That was her t-shirt.
that's
Uh, the joy that these players have with him just makes me laugh because he makes his team so much better. But everybody comes back and sees him, and he goes and visits them. And the fact that he has such a sense of humor for them to have T-shirts that they just make
Yep,
fun of him for makes me,
yep,
I used to not like him that much. I've grown to love him more and more, and
yep.
this is one reason why.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it shows that obviously he's one of the best coaches in college basketball. We've seen that in his wins, but obviously he's a good person and a good role model, for these girls, which is important, especially in college. Like your coaches are kind of like your parents because you're away from home and you're with them so much. So it really just shows that he has a good bond with them. And like I didn't really like him that much either because I just thought he was just winning and dominating, and I like to see other people kind of like get into that. But after seeing all that and seeing how he actually like cares about these girls, and even when they leave, it's not just all right, out of sight, out of mind. Um, you know, just shows good coaching and good relationships, which is always good to see.
Especially because they haven't won a national championship since Stewie left, and
Yeah,
there's still such a respect and joy and love with his players despite not winning like the big prize.
yeah,
I mean, and
absolutely.
I know that last year was the first year they hadn't made it to a Final Four in years, but still, uh, there's that, and I also kind of like love it when Haley Jones and for Stanford would get Tara to do, they call her T Dog and put her on TikToks, and she was just having fun.
Yeah,
So, you know, people get older, they realize that it doesn't have to be as serious as it once was. Also, they're super established and they're not going to get fired or anything. So
yeah,
you can just have
exactly.
a little bit more like joy with it. So that's nice.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to the bottom side of the bracket. We got Ohio State versus Duke. And I said I didn't think Duke was going to be able to keep up with Ohio State because I
Mm,
thought Ohio State was going to score. Um, that's not true because Duke is good defensively. I thought that they were going to do better, and Duke is not the best scorers, but recently Duke has been scoring a lot and putting it together well. And it was one of those where Duke ridiculously out rebounded Ohio State,
mhm.
and Reagan for Duke just killed it. Two back to back, I think 25, 26 point games. And Duke just dominated Ohio State. Like
Yeah,
this was not even, it didn't even feel like Ohio State was in this game that much because Duke was just took it and ran after they got the lead back because they were down early. And then once they got the lead back, Ohio State was not going to do anything to get it back from Duke.
yeah, I mean, just watching this game, you could see that the attitude of Duke, they could just tell that this was their game, and Ohio State didn't have any answers for it. I was honestly surprised because I picked Ohio State to win this game, especially after last year Colorado played Duke. Obviously, it's a different team now, but I kind of saw Duke fold as a team in that game,
Mhm.
and Duke was handling business. They were not going to lose this game, and Ohio State just didn't really have an answer, which I was surprised about because I didn't feel like I've seen that team all year from Ohio State. So
It
I don't know.
early on, because I thought they were gonna be a Final Four team at the beginning of the year, and they lost a game, like, USC beat them 1st game. I think it was their 1st, maybe 2nd game of the year, um, and then they were just kinda not putting it together, and then after they beat Iowa, they just ran away with what I thought they were gonna do, and so
Yeah.
this Duke game is great because Duke has been up and down this year about beating teams and then doing and if they can get it together offensively, they're dangerous, and then Kara Lawson and I believe that I agree with almost everything that Kara Lawson says. She said that we're just very honest with our team because that's how they learn to grow.
Mhm.
Very honest with our team. So if we're not doing something, we're not going to sugarcoat it, but we're not going to like this is where we need to improve. And throughout the year, if you have those conversations with your team, then that will help them improve. And they totally did that. And now they're in a Sweet 16. And
Mhm.
you got a former Tennessee guard that lost I'm trying to think if it was 1 or 2. I don't think she was there in 2004. Lost twice, though, in the Final Four to UConn, playing against the man that used to coach against her and beat her in the
Yeah.
Sweet 16. So this is where I'm having fun because I thought it was going to be Ohio State and UConn as a repeat of the Sweet 16 from last year, where Ohio State got UConn. But to have a former Tennessee player that's now coaching against, a man that was the coach of the team that beat her in the national championship game. I was at that game in 2003 when Tennessee lost to UConn because I'm pretty sure Kara graduated in 2003 to them. So that's like another extra that makes this kind of fun. The former Tennessee guard going up against UConn.
Yeah.
Can Duke pull off another episode upset and beat UConn? Can they? Yes. Will they?
I don't think Duke.
No.
I mean,
No.
I think anything can happen. Any team in this tournament could upset another team, but I don't think that will happen. I think UConn has too much experience. Gino's just not going to let that happen. UConn's not going to let that happen. I, I I think it'll be a good game. I think Duke will come out firing and do their very best, but I don't think they'll win it. I'm still going with UConn.
I'm going with UConn as well. But this is the thing that makes me very interested. Even though UConn was at home, for their first and second round, they have not played for regionals that far away from UConn. So they have to go clear to Portland. They have to go cross
Yeah,
country. And I know it's no big deal because they'll get there and they'll have plenty of time. But it makes me just kind of like how much, I mean, they do travel, but they haven't gone that far away from home for regionals in a long, long time. So that may be like a 1% factor in what happens. But I mean, Duke's doing the same thing, but they're used to. I think they're more used to traveling. UConn isn't.
yeah,
This is just me trying to sow some seeds of possibilities of why things could go wrong. I have UConn in the Elite Eight, and I have them playing USC,
same.
and I have UConn still going to the Final Four like I did before. Are you sticking with USC?
I'm sticking with USC.
Okay, there we go. So there's that bracket. Now we're gonna get into the most interesting bracket. It's still interesting. Um, Iowa's Iowa's bracket, Regional 2 in Albany. All right, so you picked Princeton. I picked West Virginia to play Iowa in the second round. Oh, I got to say this. One thing that was happy is social media. Holy Cross had a really good joke about Tiffany, like the Tiffany Haddish meme when they were in Iowa, and it was them on their home court being like, with her voiceover, and all of them, they're like, "This is nice. Oh my god!" Like, there's like no roaches or anything. So, I just want to shout out to Holy Cross about how hilarious that was. Look that up. It's just funny with them being in at Iowa playing there, appreciating the nice arena. Um,
Yeah,
so then they get, beat by Iowa, and Iowa
yeah,
plays West Virginia in the second round, and West Virginia had a shot. They had a
they
shot.
did. They did have a shot. They had a shot, but towards the end, they made mistakes that cost them the game. I mean, it was just key making smarter shots, getting those rebounds, things like that in Iowa at home. Caitlin's last home game,
It
they
wasn't going
just
to
took
happen.
care of business. It wasn't. I thought that West Virginia was going to have it for a second, and then Caitlin started getting fired up, and they started making a few shots, and it was over at that point.
Oh, and oh man, that first half was a defensive battle. And if
Mhm.
you tell me that you hold Iowa to 64 points, most
Yeah.
likely you're going to win. But West Virginia is not a high scoring team, and Iowa prevented them from getting fast break points.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was their undoing. And people can say what they want about fouls and whatnot. West Virginia's an aggressive team. These things, I still think Iowa. You can say whatever you want. I don't see anything in that. Iowa wins this game. It, yeah, they won it. They outright won it. It was tough. It was hard, and that was good for them because they need to get into that because I think their next game is also going to be a tough defensive battle. So here we go. We're just gonna go right into it. So Colorado beats Drake in the first round. First
Yep.
half was great. Drake, I can tell you that looking at Drake versus Colorado, I think if you counted the weight versus Drake versus Colorado, Colorado looked like they were so much bigger than them. It looked like older sisters versus younger sisters. If you, like my brother said, like the eye test when we're at the game. And Drake fought in there. They were just a little spunky. In the second half,
Yeah.
Colorado just takes out Drake. K State played Portland. Portland had a player named Maisie. Her last name started with a B. Number 24. So much fun. She was a baller. So those first two rounds were not first rounds for K State and Colorado weren't easy. But then when they
Yeah.
played each other in the second round, Colorado held K State in the second half to 15 points, and it was atrocious from my side of things. From your side of things, it looked pretty good.
Yeah. I
Ugh.
mean, Colorado was doing what they do. I mean, they out rebounded K State, and K State just had more turnovers than them. And
Yeah, abysmal.
that's what killed K State, honestly, is the rebounds and turnovers. It was a
Ah,
good game. Both teams were matched up pretty well. Again, it could have gone either way, and we talked about that. Obviously, you had K State winning, I had Colorado winning, but we knew it was going to be a good game. And
it,
at the end of the day, Colorado just out rebounded them, and they just Kansas had 22 turnovers. It's hard
how
to win a game with 22 turnovers.
It was so bad. It was so bad. There were some angles trying to enter into the post, like, 'cause Arnett had 7 steals,
Yeah,
and every time the ball went in, I was like, You can't even see your numbers. Why are you trying to get the ball to Aoka? You can't see your numbers." And this is where when they were going up against each other, like, physically, Arnett's just a little bit shorter than her. Everything else, though, pretty
yeah.
even body size, and so I knew that was gonna be dangerous, and it was just so dumb, some of these entry passes, and all I kept telling my mom was, "Move her up to the high post to get Aaronette out of there, and then we could have some kind of." Oh, it was so
Yeah.
frustrating, but, Maddie Nolan was on, and I can tell you that I am very disappointed in you, Frida Foreman, if you were listening, that I did not get to see you make 1 three-pointer after talking about how good your shot was with this girl that I'm looking at right now, 'cause I know how good of a shooter Frida is. You didn't make 1 3 in Manhattan. You were in foul trouble the first game. This one, you what is wrong with you? Like, I
Hey,
wanted to see you make a 3.
don't talk
So,
about Freddie like that, but
I
she's
am.
saving it.
Yeah,
She's saving it for Iowa. She had to
there you
save
go.
up for Deuces. She's saving it.
Yeah.
Just
Um,
wait.
oh,
Frida will
yeah,
come
but
out firing. I have faith in her.
I
She
mean,
is an amazing player. And see, but here's the thing. That's the one thing about Colorado. I'm gonna hype up Colorado.
do
Even
it.
if a few players aren't playing super well, like Tam, Tamia Sadler, she was having a great game. Jalen wasn't having her best game. Jalen was like, put Tam in. She's playing better than me. And Tam went off in that game. So that's what Colorado has. Colorado just has people to step up when other players might not be performing as well. And I think that's what's going to be, really useful for us moving forward. And Jalen, Frida, all these players they'll be fine. They'll have their shining, especially against Iowa. I'm counting Frida going down for at least three threes. I'm gonna give her maybe 5, but I'm gonna go with 3 to
Okay.
start,
Well,
and it's gonna be a good game.
Maddie was shooting very well,
Yes.
in Manhattan. She had 2 games, and I saw her play in Elite 8 2 years ago with Michigan, so Maddie Nolan
Mhm.
was doing really well. I really am interested in seeing what Quay and Aaronette are gonna be able to do in the post, against Stolke.
Yeah.
That that is a big thing 'cause, yeah, Tam played great. The first game, not so much, like, scoring. In that second game, she was just hitting, like, your nice little jump shots for
Yep.
Colorado, and so, good on you guys. I mean, like I said, I had a front row to it. There was a little lull where they didn't score for, like, the first, like, 6, I don't know, 6 and a half minutes of the 4th quarter and
Uh-huh.
let K-State back in, but K-State didn't score that much. So, I mean, you're still controlling it. So, if you can come up with that defense against Iowa and like a little bit more scoring. That's where I'm scared for Colorado for your team is the scoring needs to be more. Um, yeah, but K-State is a defensive team, and I mean Iowa only scored 64 and Colorado only scored 63 the past 2 games. So this is when
Yeah.
things get tight. And um, Colorado played Iowa such a good game last year in the Sweet 16. So repeat of last year. I still have Iowa, and you obviously have Colorado to go to the Elite Eight. And
Oh, yeah.
I hope that you have fun watching your team on Saturday since you get to be there.
Yes. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
so much fun. It's gonna be fun regardless, but I'm giving it to Colorado. Colorado's going all the way. That's what I'm
So,
saying.
oh yeah, all the way. So here we go. So we've got LSU and UCLA. So, are you gonna wear like a Colorado hoodie and then just like a Pac-12 t-shirt? So you're not technically wearing a UCLA t-shirt underneath like a hoodie, but you at least show some support for UCLA because I know that you would rather. I think that you would want UCLA to win
I
over
do think
LSU.
I'm still gonna go with Colorado, but I will be. I think that's a given. If you're wearing Colorado, you're going for the Pac-12. I think
Okay.
that's kind of
Well, because
that's
the
a
last
given.
yeah, the last time that Colorado and UCLA played, we called it like our game of the week on Monday on ESPN, and it was just the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
not very
not great. Yeah, not great. But so here we go. Let's get into this. So the one game that did not go chalk in the first round was Middle Tennessee State beating Louisville, which was
Yep.
upsetting. Louisville had an 18-point lead. So I don't feel bad a couple of these games that we picked in the first round when a team comes back by like 18 or 20 points, like
Yep.
with like Maryland and Iowa State, and then um, Middle Tennessee over Louisville, and then Middle Tennessee 4 minutes 20 seconds it left in the third quarter. It is tied with LSU at 43, and then LSU just was like, "All right, we've been asleep for this game. Now we're awake."
Yeah.
And just outscored them 40-13 in the last 14 minutes of the game. So I mean, and they had a tough game against Rice in that first round where they only won by 10. So is this motivating for LSU or is this make you worry?
For LSU.
Yeah.
I'm worried for LSU. I don't think LSU has been playing super great. I think they underestimated Middle Tennessee, and that kind of was shown. So UCLA is a really good team. They're a really athletic team. They're not going to be able to let up in this game because UCLA will make them pay. So it's going to be a good game, a very athletic game, but LSU has to come. You can't be sleeping in any of these games moving forward because the competition won't be sleeping.
Well, all right. So speaking of sleeping, I've said this on the Across the Pond Liberty podcast about how I want the Liberty to come out and punch people in the mouth,
Yeah,
like, and wake up. So Creighton beats UNLV. I picked UNLV in the first round because they had 30 wins and 2 losses, even though Creighton in the Big East was good. Creighton handles them and then is beating UCLA so handily in the first
I know.
half and looked not scared at all. They shot 59%. They made UCLA look slow, which I was not ready for. I'm like, UCLA, these girls from Nebraska, and you look slow on your home court. Like, what is missing? I was not picking up on anything that's missing, but good for Creighton and UCLA. This is again with the thing. It's like, okay, you did not have a good first half, and then you fought and clawed, and then came back to win 67-63. But
Mhm.
I was thinking about this. Creighton actually has Elite Eight experience. UCLA doesn't.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's a factor. And Creighton obviously isn't scared of anybody, but this kind of like gives me pause about UCLA, even though I still wanted them. I don't know if I wanted them to win. I like an upset, but with UCLA, I was like, they're better equipped to beat LSU. So I was kind of like, I don't know about this. Um, but UCLA pulls it out.
mhm.
Oh, they need to come a lot better than that because Creighton won it, punched him in the mouth. So UCLA has to turn it around.
Yes, I think that UCLA has been a little inconsistent throughout the season. They've had a lot of like ups and downs, showing up for some games, all 40 minutes, and then as you saw in the Creighton game, first half, who was UCLA in that first half? So I mean, both teams, UCLA and LSU. I think it's really going to come down to who punches first and then who punches last. That's what it's going to be.
It, that because this was always one that I was kind of I can't say I was looking forward to it, but yeah, neither of them are playing great right now. They're figuring out ways to win.
Yeah,
Even though you could say that LSU winning by 27 points would seem totally different, but not when all those points, 40 of your 83 points came in the last 14 minutes, um,
yeah,
and you're playing at home. They're each in Albany, and as much as people travel, most people are going to be in Albany to watch Caitlin play. Let's be honest. Um, so
not me.
I want it, not you, I think most. Um, I'm gonna be very curious to see on how the crowd leans in that LSU UCLA game, and how many of them are gonna be there early because they have the first game of the day, um, on
Dirty time
Saturday.
slot.
Yeah, they have the noon, and it's a noon game, and then Colorado and Iowa follows at 2:30. So be interesting. I'm still choosing UCLA. I have UCLA, Iowa in that Elite Eight, and then I have UCLA winning. Just I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
it's 1:30 and 3:30 Eastern time then.
Eastern time. So I'm doing my Central Time. That's how it comes
Oh,
up on the app.
that's
Yeah.
okay, that's okay.
Yeah. So it was yeah, 1 and 3:30 Eastern Time. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, there you go. Thank you for that correction. Alright, so Colorado versus UCLA, Colorado for you in the Final Four?
Yep,
Alright, so I'm guessing you're sticking with Colorado, South Carolina in your final?
yep.
Alright, so I am gonna switch again. I'm gonna have South Carolina versus UConn in my final.
Okay,
UCLA, UConn, South Carolina, Stanford. I'm gonna go South Carolina, UConn, same final as 2 years ago, and then I'm still choosing South Carolina. So, just a
alright.
little Paige Buckets has been impressive.
Yeah, wow, she is.
Yeah.
But I still got faith in Colorado, so
I they were very confident in that K-State game, and there was a lot of people, and we were loud, and
mhm,
they kept their composure pretty well because they did get down in the second quarter, and then just stayed in it, and then just controlled it. So good on
yeah.
them. They're big and strong, just big and strong,
Um,
and I can tell you that I feel like I felt like Maddie Nolan looked so confident shooting. Of course, she made shots, and there was just a different level of confidence that Colorado had over K State.
Yeah.
So they are playing confidently, even if they're not scoring as much as I would like them to if they want to make a run against Iowa. But rematch of Sweet 16 last year. We'll see. We'll see what happens after next week when we come back with you guys and see on how much we're changing once the Final Four is set. You never
Yes.
know what's going to happen. I mean, you never know. But yeah, this is gonna it still continues to be interesting, even though it's a lot of chalk. So we'll see
Yes.
if the chalk stays or not. But there's not been that many upsets.
No, not yet.
Not yet. I mean, the Duke is just the biggest one. Everything else, a 4-5 upset, like whoop de doo.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The rest of this, we'll see if anyone can defeat South Carolina. No one
We'll
thought it was
see.
possible last year.
I know.
Uh, no. All right. Well, until next time.
Until next
Uh,
week.
until next time, we will see you guys next week when we have a Final Four set and see how many pack teams we get in there.
Yes.
Ah, at least one. Got to have at least one. All right. Well, until then, I am Stacia Whitaker.
And I am Aubrey Knight.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.